Before we begin, pause for just a second. If you want stories like this to keep finding you, then like and hit the subscribe button. And leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, turn the lights down, stay very still, and let the shadows take over. I first noticed the house on Ashwood Lane one rainy evening on my drive home. All the windows were dark, the paint peeling like it hadn't been touched in years. It didn't look abandoned, at least not entirely. A single light flickered in an upstairs bedroom, just long enough to make me hit the brakes. I knew curiosity was a bad reason to stop, but it had me anyway. A few weeks later, I found myself walking past the place under the weak yellow glow of a street lamp. Rain slid off my hood and gathered in the gutters. I told myself I wasn't going inside. I really believed that. Then I noticed the front door slightly open, creaking when I nudged it with my shoulder. Inside, the air felt damp and sharp with a metallic tang. Shadows clung to the corners. I froze when I heard footsteps upstairs, slow, measured, intentional. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs. Her skin looked pale, almost waxy, and her hair hung in uneven strands around her shoulders. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her voice wasn't angry, just calm. Too calm. She lifted one hand and beckoned. I followed her, even though every instinct told me not to. The inside of the house was spotless. No dust, no clutter. The floors gleamed, and the walls were lined with family photos. A man, a boy, a little girl, all smiling, all locked in another time. Their eyes seemed to follow me as she led me into the kitchen and offered tea. My hands shook as I accepted it. "Most people don't stay long," she said. "You're different." Mostly I talked. She listened. Really listened. Everything I said felt examined, like she was filing it away. When I mentioned my apartment, her expression tightened just a bit. "You live alone," she said. "That can be dangerous." I tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out thin and wrong. Time blurred. Minutes might have been hours. Eventually, she led me upstairs to a guest room. The bed was neatly made, sheets crisp, blankets folded with unsettling precision. "You should rest," she said. I didn't want to. I felt small there, like something fragile being handled too carefully. I woke in the middle of the night to a sound I couldn't quite identify. A whisper, maybe. No, something closer. Heavier. There was pressure against my lips. I gasped and it vanished. The room was empty. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, shadows unmoving. I lay there, rigid, listening as the house seemed to breathe around me. Morning came too fast. Breakfast was waiting on the table. Eggs cooked perfectly, toast sliced at exact angles, coffee poured halfway up the mug. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. I nodded, even though my stomach was tight with dread. She handed me an envelope. More than I'd had in months. "All I ask in return," she said, "is honesty, respect, and boundaries." I smiled because it felt expected. Of course. Her son, Caleb, watched silently. I never once met his eyes, but I felt them everywhere. When I left, I felt lighter and ashamed. A quiet voice inside me said I'd crossed a line I wouldn't be able to uncross. That night, back in my apartment, I realized I hadn't really left the house at all. The shadows came with me, patient and quiet, waiting for me to slip. I thought I was doing the responsible thing. Visiting Renee Whitlow's house felt harmless at first. A white colonial with black shutters, an American flag folded neatly on the porch. Her warm smile, firm handshake, and polite insistence that I remove my shoes made me feel welcomed. Say, that was the first trap. Dinner was classic comfort food: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. The house smelled clean, almost aggressively so, like lemon polish layered over cooked meat. Renee guided me through the meal with gentle corrections. How to hold my fork, how to talk about my job, how much was appropriate to share. Like my survival depended on it. Caleb, her adult son, lingered on the stairs, quiet and observant. polite, attentive, unsettlingly calm. After dinner, she showed me to the guest room. Crisp sheets, hospital corners tucked tight. "You should stay the night," Renee said. Caleb agreed without hesitation. I told myself I was overthinking it. This was structure, not control. Order, not danger. Sleep didn't come easily. I kept rehearsing normal explanations until exhaustion finally won. The first night changed everything. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear a door open. I didn't hear anything at all until something cold pressed against my lips. I jolted awake, gasping, heart racing, body frozen. The ceiling fan turned too slowly above me. The house smelled clean in a way that suddenly felt wrong. I checked my mouth. Nothing. No trace. Still, something primitive lodged itself in my chest and refused to leave. Morning was worse. Breakfast waited on the table, arranged with precision. Scrambled eggs, toast sliced evenly, coffee poured exactly halfway up the mug. Renee asked if I'd slept well. Caleb sat across from me, scrolling through his phone. When Renee mentioned she always wakes early, he smiled. "Discipline matters," she said. I nodded and stayed quiet. Then she handed me an envelope. More than I'd seen in months. Enough to cover rent, utilities, everything pressing down on me. In exchange, she said calmly, honesty, respect, and boundaries. I agreed before my brain caught up. Relief tightened around my ribs, tangled with shame. It felt less like an offer and more like gravity. After that, the arrangement escalated. Daily messages. "Did you eat? Are you tired?" Photos of meals I was expected to mirror. Reminders to rest. Subtle rules appeared at the table. Finish what's on your plate, phones away, eat together. When I mentioned a job interview, Renee stopped me with a gentle touch. "Why add stress?" she said. Caleb nodded. I obeyed. The knot in my stomach hardened. The second night brought clarity I didn't want. I heard movement downstairs, cabinets opening, a spoon clinking against glass. Caleb brushed it off. Said his mother worried about nutrition. I knew that wasn't it. Midnight came anyway. Renee stood in the hallway, spoon in hand, brown gravy glistening under the light. "Midnight snack," she whispered. My gag reflex surged. Caleb told me to accept it. Mama knows best. Something inside me fractured. I ran, barefoot, took Caleb's keys, drove through the freezing night until the sky began to lighten. I didn't stop until I felt empty. The texts and voicemails followed, calm, confused, terrifyingly normal. 2 months later, the packages stopped. A year after that, the news broke. Renee was arrested for drugging and restraining a caregiver. Caleb was questioned but released. Compliance conditioning. Feeding rituals. I never felt relief. Only the memory of that cold, impossible weight against my lips. Some nights I wake suddenly, certain I hear a spoon clink in the dark. And I remember this: leaving is the only difference between survival and submission. Rowan Pike was charming in a way that made you forget caution. Crooked teeth, loud laugh. The kind of guy who could spill beer on a bar table and blame it on nerves. At first, his pranks were harmless. Jump scares, fake roaches, swapped ringtones. I laughed, called him dramatic when I didn't want to. I wanted to believe people could change. 6 months in, it stopped being funny. Bathroom lights cutting out mid-shower, a siren blaring from a Bluetooth speaker. I was exhausted, jumpy, sleeping lightly, bracing for the next surprise. When he noticed, he started fixing things, cooking dinner, leaving notes on the fridge, actually listening. I wanted to believe him, but something inside me tensed whenever he smiled, that crooked, too easy smile. Then came the air fryer. Expensive, thoughtful gift. My heart should have swelled. Instead, red flags flashed. The box seemed normal. Manuals, styrofoam, everything factory fresh. Until I pulled out the bottom tray. Something rolled. Grayish, soft in a way plastic never is. A human finger. I screamed. The fryer slipped, smashed on the tile. The finger bounced once, twice, then stopped. Rowan ran in. What happened? I demanded, trembling. Ivy, I swear I didn't. His smile vanished. I didn't put that there, he said quietly. The moment stretched, frozen. Fear, confusion, disbelief collided in my chest. Not a joke. Not a prank. We drove to the police station, fingers sealed in a sandwich bag. I expected confession, laughter, a twisted reveal. Nothing. Rowan stayed calm, compliant, as if he'd rehearsed every scenario. Outside the station, I gave him one last chance. If it was a joke, now was the time. He said nothing. I stepped away. The next day, I went to Northway Electronics, where he'd been caught opening boxes in the air fryer aisle. The clerk stiffened at his photo. Every appliance tray contained the same horrors: fingers, teeth, an ear, an eye, all real. Rowan was arrested the next day in an abandoned meatpacking plant. His reasoning? I thought it was funny. His sister, Lennox, found dismembered across 3 counties. I moved away, changed my name. But the echo of terror didn't leave me. Noise startles me, shadows feel too near, and the memory of holding that cold, impossible weight in my hands never faded. Rowan's charm, that careless grin, the slow escalation, it all taught me a lesson. The line between love, humor, and terror is thinner than we think. One day it exists. The next, it's obliterated by something no one could anticipate. I still think about that moment, standing in my kitchen, staring at a finger that shouldn't exist. How easily normalcy can unravel. How fear can lodge itself inside a person, invisible yet tangible, until every interaction afterward carries its weight. I never planned to use an app that promised help, guidance, or companionship. At 23, I was living in a cramped off-campus apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. I was broke in the very specific way that keeps you awake at night. Rent overdue, electricity warnings taped to the door, evenings spent at a bar smiling through jokes I hated for tips I needed. The ad felt ridiculous. Discreet companionship. Generous allowance. No intimacy required. Professional women only. I laughed. Then I checked my bank account. Then I downloaded it. Her profile was almost empty. Evelyn Hartwell. Black background. A short bio about honesty, intelligence, and emotional awareness. I nearly skipped past her. Then she messaged me. "You're awake late," she wrote. That usually means worry. My chest tightened. I hadn't said anything yet. Her next message came seconds later. "Rent, tuition, groceries. You skipped dinner again." My heart started racing. No one knew that. No one. 2 days later, $500 appeared in my account. "For groceries," she said. "For warm food." I stared at the balance for a long time. It wasn't just the money, it was the fact that someone had noticed. Someone had paid attention. We started talking regularly. Classes, childhood, sleep habits, fears I didn't usually say out loud. She never crossed a line, never asked for photos, never flirted. She listened, she advised, she guided. Gratitude slowly braided itself with something colder. Then the suggestions turned specific. "Skip the bus tonight," she messaged once. "Walk instead." I did. That night, the bus was hit by a drunk driver. Later, exam schedules shifted. Plans fell apart. Doors closed and others opened, always lining up neatly with her guidance. It felt impossible. I joked once about her being psychic. She replied, calm as ever. "Normal is just a story people agree to believe." We met once in a crowded cafe. Daytime. Public. My rules. She wore an expensive coat and sat perfectly still, eyes sharp, posture relaxed. Within minutes, she mentioned details I had never shared. My childhood dog's name, my high school mascot, habits I hadn't thought about in years. I laughed, thin and nervous. She leaned forward slightly and said, "You don't need to be afraid. I'm keeping you safe." That was when fear finally settled in my chest, heavy and immovable. After that, the control tightened. Classes to skip. friends to avoid, routes home to change. When I ignored her, small things went wrong, lost items, locked doors, unexplained delays. Once, police swarmed an alley I'd planned to cut through. No arrests, no explanation. My allowance arrived early that week. I tried to pull away. That's when the pressure showed up in places I couldn't fight. My scholarship suddenly under review, academic warnings that vanished as quickly as they appeared. She never threatened me outright. She never had to. Digging deeper, I learned Evelyn Hartwell didn't exist. No records. No history. The payments traced back to a shell company tied to something called Hartwell Behavioral Systems. Government adjacent, focused on predictive human behavior. I wasn't a sugar baby. I was a test subject. When I confronted her, I typed, "I didn't consent to this." Her response came instantly. Consent only matters when all outcomes are visible. I wanted to see how long fear could replace freedom before you noticed. I deleted the app, blocked the payments, reported everything. Nothing happened. My scholarship was quietly restored. Life smoothed itself out, at least on the surface. But some nights, my phone lights up with no notifications. No sound, just the glow. And I know she's still watching, still calculating. Evelyn never needed my permission to observe.